Welcome. You've splash landed into this Prosecco-laden podcast, straight into the woo-woo pool with the crew of Ohm-g. We're just a simple group of tragically imperfect and highly empathic BFFs, exploring a wide range of atypical topics with humor, grace, and curiosity. This is Ohm-g.
Hello, guys. This is Brenda Sue Jean Louise Jolene III.
And this is Lynn.
And we are the
Ohm-g, the podcast.
And we would like to welcome you to an intimate conversation between Lynn and I about mediumship, intuition, psychic abilities, whatever it is that you want to call it. We thought we would sit down and talk about some of the stories that we've experienced, some of the readings that we've had. And I was telling Lynn that I don't remember most of them. Like, I remember like little snippets of things that happened, especially if they were really moving messages that came through or the people had a real reaction to it. But for the most part, I think because we don't need to hold that information in our brain, then I just have forgotten a lot of them. And I've forgotten a lot of the names, too, of the people that I've read for.
Oh, yeah. In order to record this podcast today, I actually contacted a few of my clients and asked them to share some things with me because I started drawing a blank.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
It's really irritating because you think, I want to be able to validate what I'm doing to myself and to people who are listening. Like, this is real. I just can't remember it.
Yeah. I always say after I read for someone, like, it's been a little bit of a struggle for me because I don't have that validation how the reading went because I don't remember it.
Right.
And so I'm like,
I hope it was good for you.
Exactly. As it was for me.
Right. Because channeling is always a good time. Because you go into that space of channeling and you kind of step out of your own self, I think, a little bit.
Yeah.
Even though I'm aware of what's going on in the moment, for the most part, sometimes I do get a little bit lost.
Yeah, I think it's the same for me too. Like, even though I'm aware that I'm talking to someone and I'm aware of what's coming out at the time, it doesn't stay after that. It just kind of fades away unless it's something like majorly significant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can share some stories because that'll be fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll share just one little quick story. I had a client recently, and I usually, either while I'm driving to the office, I will start to tune into their energy and kind of see what comes through. And so I was driving to the office, and I think I had gotten some different family members because I'll get like mother, or I'll hear father or grandmother. And I know, okay, that's who wants to come in. Or I'll get a feeling about the spirit that wants to chat. And this time I was sitting in the waiting room and I was waiting for her to come, and I was tuning into her and kind of getting into that space. And I saw this massive, dark colored SUV. And whenever she got there, in my mind's eye, as I was seeing this, like trying to tune into her, I saw all these people just piling out of this huge vehicle. And I thought, oh, that's funny. She must be bringing a crowd with her. And so I'm sitting there and she pulls up and she is driving a massive Yukon XL or something like that. And with the shadow of the building, the vehicle looked dark colored whenever she pulled up. And I thought, oh, Lord, this is going to be a good one.
I love when spirit comes in like that.
I know. And it was really fun. I mean, it was tons of family members, and they were a fun little party group, a family.
Yeah. So Brenda and I actually, we mediumed each other.
As you do.
As one does. A little while back, I think that I had been in my bedroom meditating because I was getting ready to come down to Brenda's house to do some like magical stuff, and I was getting grounded. And when I came out, my great-grandmother, my grandma Ruby, who, if you've listened to the podcast, you've heard us speak about her, and her two brothers were having a family meeting in my dining room. And they kind of scared me a little bit. And I was like, oh. And immediately I saw a picture that I have of my great grandmother and the two sons. And it's actually on my ancestor altar. So I was like, oh, I think I need to send that to Brenda. Why? I don't know, but I generally tend to listen to myself when stuff like that comes through because you never know.
That's your intuition talking, girl.
Yeah. And sometimes I don't listen to her though, and she has to get loud. But anyway. So I went and got the picture and I snapped a picture of it and I sent it to Brenda. And then Brenda, in turn, takes me back and what you had dreamed of.
Yeah, I had a dream. I had seen that person in my dream.
Yeah. And so
I don't remember the dream now.
Yeah. But she was like, oh, that man on the left or right, she was, whichever one it was, she was like, oh my God, I dreamed about him. And I was like, what? And so we had this little conversation going back and forth. And I was like, all right, well, I'm getting ready to come to your house anyway. We'll pick the conversation up. And I set my phone down and I was already in the car. And I was overcome with emotion. So I had to sit there for a moment. And I was like, oh my God, this is a huge connection that Brenda's dreaming about my great uncle that's dead. Or would he be my great uncle, I guess?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's weird. And it just made me emotional. And so I was like, okay, about 5 minutes later, I left the house. And I kid you not, I get up the road and there is a massive crash. And if I had left 5 minutes earlier, I would have been tangled up in that. And I was like, oh, they just mediumed us.
Yeah. They were saving us from ourselves.
Exactly.
That's so crazy.
As spirits do.
Yeah. That's a great story. I was thinking about my daughter. I think I've told part of this story on the podcast before, but I haven't explained the entire story. My daughter, who is 26 now or 27, Lord, I can't keep up anymore. You know, I got so many kids.
The old woman in the shoe.
That's right. She had been to school. She was in middle school, maybe still at the time, or she may have been a freshman in college or high school. I can't remember. But no, she was still in middle school. So she had gone to school and they were talking about, they were talking about slavery and all of those horrible incidents. And they had been watching some movie. And I don't know what the movie was, but she was really emotional about it and really upset. And she came to me and she was like, I don't understand why no one else was upset. And so we're sitting in my bedroom and my bedroom was painted yellow at that time. And as we're sitting there talking, I'm looking behind her at the wall and I see a face of an African-American man. And it's not like black and white. It was like a white apparition, but it was just the head.
Mm.
And you could see the really fro kind of hair. And you could see the wide nose and you could see the bushy beard. And so I knew it was an African-American man because it was the face of a man from Africa. And so I was like, okay. And it just kept forming more and more as she was talking. And she turned around. I was like, there's a face of a man on the wall behind you as she's speaking with all of this emotion. And so it kind of, I think it dissipated or disappeared. And we went on about our day. And then a couple of weeks later, I had gone to pick up my other daughter at a friend's house. And they lived out where there wasn't any street lighting. I'm sitting there in my minivan, girl, because I had a bunch of kids. So I had a minivan. And I see that face coming at me from outside up to my windshield. And it freaked me out a little bit because it was moving towards me, but then it just disappeared. And I wasn't afraid of it, but it was, that's weird, right?
I mean, a floating head is kind of weird.
Yeah, right? So I had past life recollections of being in the South. And I was the daughter of a slave owner. And so I was trying to help them. I befriended a lot of them and were trying to help them escape, some of them, trying to teach them how to read. And I was really connected with that. And my father didn't like it. And so that's about all the detail I got from that lifetime. And then I had a reading with the lovely Melissa Sparrow.
Shout out, Melissa.
Mm-hmm. She's going to be on the podcast again soon. And we were in a lifetime together. in Ireland. And she said, your dress is pink, but it's different than mine. And it's got these ribbons around the sleeves. And she said, you're from Georgia and you came from a plantation. And that man was your father, that I'd had this whole past life memory with somebody else during a past life regression. And she said that I had escaped. He had died and we had all like escaped that whole situation. And Colleen, my daughter now, was my daughter in that lifetime. And I'd taken her with me. And so that man's face that we saw is her father in this lifetime. And they've had many lifetimes together. He's still living. So I don't know how that works.
That's wild to me.
You know, I mean,
parallel timeline.
Yeah, life is crazy.
It is.
Our existence is crazy.
Yeah. There's nothing that's really set, I don't think.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
I know we refer to things as like past lives, but sometimes I wonder, is it really past?
I think it's...
Are some of them past and some of them are happening at the same time?
I think there's probably a lot of both of that going on.
Right. It's a little bit mind-blowing.
It is, and I love to go down that rabbit hole because I think you can exist on multiple timelines at the same time. And that's only because, you know, my grandma Ruby, I think we talked about it one time. My grandma Ruby came in when I was in meditation and took me on an astral travel. And she took me to a place in Sweden and she was showing me what appeared to be a past life. And she gave me all this information. And during the course of that day, all of that information came to me again in a different way.
Oh, interesting.
Which was really wild. But she told me when I was talking with her, she said, all of this is going on at the same time. And you can choose to go to any timeline you want to when you go back to spirit.
That's so crazy.
And I said, makes sense to me.
Well, I want to go somewhere nice. And I want to make sure I'm there with you.
Oh, we'll be
with
together.
My friends.
We'll be together again. No doubt about that.
Again.
But before we're in our 50s next time.
Yeah. When we're young and virile.
When we're young and full of mischief.
Right.
Shenanigans, if you will.
I'm sure we've done that together too.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you want to tell one of your stories, girl?
So yeah, another, I won't say it's good or bad, but a big one that happened is I have a friend that comes to my house every Halloween night. And some people refer to that as Samhain. And they say that the veil is thinner on that day.
And it is.
And, you know, maybe it is. They have an easier time coming in. But every Halloween, we have dinner at my house. And because I love to cook, y'all. And so I make us dinner and we set the table for us, but we also set it for our ancestors. And we bring pictures and just trinkets or whatever. And we don't sit silently during dinner like some people do. When they do that, we actually talk about our ancestors and tell funny stories and whatnot. So the first time she came over and we did that, the room started filling up with spirits. And I channeled her grandmother, her grandfather, and 3 of her really good friends that have passed. And it was like, oh my God, like she could not get over it because I don't think she'd ever seen me channel like that. So anyway, long story short, we finished and we go into the kitchen and I stopped dead in my tracks and I said, Steve, somebody is here named Steve. And she turned around and she said, oh no, I don't want to talk to him. Tell him no. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I was like, oh, she don't want to talk to you. So you got to get out of here. Like, go on now, skedaddle. And come to find out, it was someone that she knew very, very well that had just died within the year. And they had had some issues while he was on the planet. And I had never even heard her speak his name because she didn't like relate to him at all. She didn't talk about him. So that was...
She was like, I don't want to talk to him.
She was like, no.
Yeah.
And I was like, see ya, wouldn't want to be ya.
Yeah. I think sometimes whenever spirits come through like that, they are a lot of times they're coming through to make amends, and maybe the person isn't ready to hear that I'm sorry, or I shouldn't have done this, or I shouldn't have done that. And
that's exactly why he was coming through.
Yeah.
And I did tell her that later, because I knew, like, when he came through, you kind of feel the reason that they're there. And I was like, later on, I said, oh, he just wanted to make amends. And she said, I don't want his amends. And I said, well, maybe you'll heal over it.
He can take it and stuff it where the sun don't shine.
Oh, that's, yeah.
Yeah. So whenever I'm working with mediumship, I don't know how it is for you, because I don't know that you've ever channeled any of my loved ones, have you? I don't think you have. Maybe my grandmother's come through.
I think your grandmother has came through.
Well, whenever I'm sitting with a new client, I like to know exactly who I'm talking to, because sometimes I'll get like these vague things that are like, oh, this could apply to like 2 or 3 different people, or both of my grandmothers, or whatever. So I tend to ask them how they passed away, if they'll show me something that was an ongoing issue, or how they actually crossed. And they'll show me like a part of the body usually, or I'll get a feeling in my body. Does that happen for you as well? Like, I like having that evidence, because it makes me feel more like, okay, this is who we're with for sure. It's
usually not. They usually don't show me how. Sometimes they show me how they pass, but when they come through for me, they tell me things that happen between them and the client. Like, oh, we used to make cookies together. And like, I can tell you what kind of cookies, or we made breads together, or we used to run around in an apple orchard together. Like, and I'll see that. And so they know, and they're like, oh, that's my grandmother. And so, I think they come through however they're able to come through, and however I can interpret it.
Yeah. I think that's part of it too, is like how you're able to interpret it, because I think a lot of times it's hard for me to know some of the things that are coming through, to know how it applies. And it can be such an unraveling of a mystery to figure it out sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had a client, I've seen her a few times, and twice her grandmother has came in and kept talking about making knot cookies. And like, I didn't remember her telling it the first time. Like, I don't remember stuff like that.
Right.
And then she came in again, and she was like, please tell her to make knot cookies with her children because of the memories. And so they come through with stuff like that how could I possibly know y'all made knot cookies together?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That jogged my memory, because I was telling Lynn this morning, I was like, I couldn't remember hardly any of these readings, but you talking about the cookies gave me a memory of a client that I had, and her grandmother had passed away, but this grandmother was more like a mother to her. And she had raised her. And so she kept showing me Christmas. It was all these Christmas things, Christmas decorations, Santa Clauses.
You'd think you were talking about me, but
I know, that's what I thought too. But she was saying that was her grandmother's favorite holiday, and that every year they would watch certain movies. And I said, what's up with this like tin of cookies? And every year she would buy her grandmother the same tin of Christmas cookies. And so
sweet.
I said, you need to go get those. She said, I already did.
Yeah, I love stuff like that.
I know.
It's just so validating for people. It's so fun, and it's fulfilling to read for people, for me. And they leave with such validation that their loved ones are still with them.
Yeah.
And it just makes it, a little bit easier, I think.
Yeah.
For some people.
We have a shared experience from Taste the Metaphysical Rainbow. We had a client or person that came in for that event. And I read, you, Carrie, and I, we all, did our thing with them. And her brother had recently passed away. And I kept seeing, like, he showed me a lot of stuff about the passing and wanting to make sure that his kid was taken care of and didn't go down the same path that he went down.
Yep.
And he kept reiterating that. But I asked, I was like, how are you going to communicate with your family? And he showed me lights, like turning lights on and off. And she had gone back to the waiting area and was waiting to go into her next session. She went into her next session, left her purse with her keys in it in the lobby. No one was touching it. and the car alarm started going off and the lights were flashing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's like instant validation.
Yeah. And that was such a fun night too, because she was in with me when the lights started flashing.
Oh, it was with you.
Yeah, she was with me. And I was telling her all these things, like he was coming through so clearly. And she was like, oh my God, like that's totally him. And so when she went back out, her car was still flashing and people were like, hey, your car. And she was like, oh my God.
That is so cool.
Yeah. How fun is that?
That's like, yes. It's me.
Yeah. I'm here.
Yeah. I love that.
I do too. I love it.
Do you have another story you want to share, girl, before I share one of mine?
Well, I'd like to share. It's not really a medium story. It's more of a tale from the table type thing. Is when I was doing this healing session with this woman, I started hearing the funniest thing. And sometimes because of my sense of humor, that's how spirit communicates with me. But while I was working on her, Snoop Dogg, shout out Snoop. I could hear his music playing in my head, drop it like it's hot. And I was like, I can't drop it like it's hot unless I'm talking about some energy, because like if I drop it too far like it's hot, like I ain't going to get back up my back. It's going to be a mess. She's going to have to get me up off the floor or whatever. It's going to be a total disaster. But I just kind of laughed. I was like, oh, that's an interesting thing to hear while I've got somebody on the table. So I get her off the table though, and I tell her what happened, and she starts laughing. And she said, I have been listening to his podcast this entire week.
Oh, that is hilarious.
She said, I love his stuff. And she said, so I've totally been listening to that. And I kid you not, she texted me the next morning and she said, girl, last night I was listening to the Snoop Dogg podcast and it was the one about drop it like it's hot.
What?
And I said, okay, so validation that I was tapped into you.
Yep.
And so that helps too, though, because when you know stuff like that about people, it kind of eases them into the other stuff that they might not want to hear, I think.
That is true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know Snoop Dogg had a podcast. Revelation.
Yeah. I don't think I knew that either, actually. I mean, I know that he's been on some podcasts and I do like his music.
I know. I like Snoop Dogg.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was
That's a great story.
I love that story.
I love all these stories.
Yeah.
It's just so much fun. Like, you sit down to read for someone and you don't know what's going to happen.
Not ever. Not ever.
And sometimes you think, am I just making all this up? Because this is crazy. And then whenever it actually makes sense, you're like, oh, that's cool.
Oh, yeah. And we've talked about this between ourselves for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes we'll sit and just open our mouth and things start coming out and we don't even know where they're coming from.
Right.
Like I'm not even having thoughts. I'm just talking.
Yep.
And when that happens, I'm like, oh, somebody's in my body.
Yeah.
Taking over.
It makes you wonder because that started happening to me more recently where I might get an impression about something and then I just start talking and I'm like, I don't even know what that was about or where that came from. That was not like, sometimes I'll see images in my head and then I go from that. Mm-hmm. But this is something completely different. So, I guess as you change and grow in working, it changes as well. Yeah. Or maybe the universal energy is changing. And so your readings change with it.
Yeah. I think it's just we grow and we raise our vibration. So we channel different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool stuff.
It is very cool stuff.
Okay. So I thought I would tell a story about one of my most recent clients. He had come to me with his wife over a year ago. And when he came in, I was like, there's something familiar about him whenever I made him an appointment, but I had made it with his wife. So I didn't know his name and he wasn't popping up on anything. I was like, I just feel like this person is familiar to me, but I don't know who it is. So he comes in, I don't recognize him. I'm like, do I know you? And he was like, yeah, I had a reading with you like a year ago. I was like, oh, okay. Still couldn't remember anything about the reading. Mm-hmm. So we're sitting and talking. And so, whenever you get men coming in, a lot of times they're not super open to the other world, so to speak.
They're skeptical.
Yeah, for sure. And the woman that came in with him, I had read for her father had passed away. And so I'd come through with a lot of details about what had happened and what she needed to do moving forward and that kind of thing. And so he said that time spent there listening had opened his mind up and he had completely transformed his thinking about it. And I was like, that is so cool. And I started tearing up and then he started tearing up and I'm like, oh Lord, I'm doing this for a reason, aren't I?
Yeah, I love that so much. It's so good that people who once wanted nothing to do with it thought that it was just a crock, if you will.
He told me he was an atheist before.
Yeah. And then it just transforms their life in the best of ways.
In the best way.
Yeah. And I just love that so much. I'm honored.
Oh, absolutely. That you can be part of somebody's journey.
Yeah.
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 Creating connection for them, even if it's not, you don't see that person ever again. You've created a connection in their life to know that, we're not here alone.
Yeah.
So let me finish telling the story.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry.
I had a story there.
Sorry.
So I'd done this reading. We'd been in there for an hour talking. And I was like, was there anybody that you wanted to connect with that you didn't get to? And he said, there's a young man that I'd like to connect with. And so I was like, okay, let me see if I can call him in. And so I started, trying to call him in. And he came in. You know that movie, Risky Business? Is it Tom Cruise? He comes sliding in on the socks.
Yep.
So this guy comes in like that. He's got a very outgoing personality, very vivacious and crazy. And the movie Risky Business itself. Remember that title. And so I said, he's saying it was an accident. He just keeps saying that over and over again. It was an accident. So he came through with some messages and I don't remember all of them because y'all know I don't remember them. But he was this man who came in now. I'm assuming he's in his 40s. And this happened when he was 23. And the person who passed away was 17.
Oh.
But they had been out on the road. This guy was driving a motorcycle and, being young and dumb. And they crashed into each other and he died on the scene.
Oh, that's horrible.
And so he had been living with this his whole life, feeling like, I killed this person. That was my fault. And living with that guilt. And then he said a couple of years ago, he did a job that he only worked for 1 year. He's always worked for himself. He went in and did this job for 1 year. And he ended up working with the brother of this guy.
Wow.
Yeah. And for the whole year, they didn't talk about it. They never acknowledged that they even knew who the other person was, even though they knew who the other person was.
Yeah.
And then on his last day on the job, the guy came up to him and started talking to him and said, I don't blame you for anything that happened. He said, I don't blame you. I forgive you, basically. And he said that day, so much guilt went off of him. But hearing from him again, because the guy was telling me, the spirit, that he was a bit of a daredevil and he was always doing risky things.
Right.
And he knew he wasn't going to live long. He knew that he was going to die young.
Right.
And I think some people just know that.
Yeah, I think so too. I think subconsciously they know. And so they do a lot of things when they're young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To get themselves hurt.
But what a great story that is, because he carried that for so long and there's no way that you could have known anything about what he was talking about. And for you to validate to him, that's an accident.
Yep.
That's very healing to come in.
Yeah.
And I can almost feel the coming together of that man, if you will. It's like a piece of him came back after that.
Yeah.
How sweet is that?
Beautiful, girl. It's just beautiful.
Yeah. I think life is beautiful.
It is.
I mean, I really do. There's so much to be.
Even whenever it's we're tired.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or we're stressed out about something. It's still, we're really lucky.
Yeah, because it's magical.
It is.
Because there is a magical aspect to life, I think. So even when it's bad, I tend to try to look toward the magic.
Yeah, if you look for it.
Yeah.
I think so many people walk around with blinders on and they don't look for the magic.
Yeah. They were taught that it wasn't real.
That's true.
They grew up in a different environment.
Yeah.
They just tons of reasons why people can't see it.
Yeah.
Or don't want to see it or acknowledge it, or they think it's fake or whatever. Yeah.
So I know we've been talking about like intuition and mediumship and all of those kinds of things, but we also do energy work too, Lynn and I both.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of healing that happens during that time too. There's so many different ways to access healing, whether it's with a reading or energy work, or you need to go exercise to help heal your body.
Yeah.
There's so many different ways to heal. I hope this brings some light to other people so that they can open their mind up to other ways of healing.
Yeah. And because healing your body is important, but healing the trauma will actually help you heal the things in your body because it's stored in there. And I don't know how much time we got, but I'm going to tell this quick story.
Yeah, please.
I had someone on the table not long ago, and I was working on her. And in my mind, I kept seeing like this web coming out of her body, and it was like fibrous. And when I got her off the table, I was like, I don't know what that was, but it was fibrous and webby, and I was pulling it out. And she started laughing. And before she came over, she had just had some work done on her fascia. And so what I was doing was pulling the blocked energy that looked like where it'd been stuck on the fascia, like I was pulling that out of her body. Now, how cool is that?
That is really cool. And I do think a lot of people carry trauma in their fascia.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation.
It has. I could talk about this for like hours.
I could too.
I mean, there's
more stories.
Yeah, there's so much more.
So maybe we'll have to do a part 2.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's been delightful.
It has been.
Having a one-on-one.
Yeah, it's been fun.
It has been. And Lynn and I are going to go out in the woods now.
Yeah.
We're going to go experience some magic in the forest.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So take care, guys. And we will talk to you on the next episode. Peace out.
See you later.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us today. Please follow and subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave a review. It's so easy to do and such a huge help for us. We appreciate your interactions so much. Want to join us at our table? Make sure to check out our YouTube channel and join our Facebook community. If you've enjoyed this content and wish to support us, take a look at our Patreon page. All information and links will be in our podcast description. Catch you next time.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM. Women's voices amplified.